It's like, I'm ringing the bell. Nobody's answering.
Yeah, I'm the thief. I'm in here letting you know I'm in here. Nada.
The thief is walking up and ringing your doorbell. After they open the door, they're like reaching out from the inside and ringing the doorbell.
Looking in the camera. Hey, I'm here.
There you go.
Help me with hip hop. Let's get it right. Protect your patience. Day and night. Donna and David, the experts on your side. Help me with hip hop. Let's get it right.
All right, Donna, today we're going to be talking about something that never happens. The title of this episode is EDR Failed, Leadership Did Too. And boy, is this a juicy one. For those of you who don't know, EDR, Extended Detection and Response. That's EDR. So that's basically what people call anti-malware, sometimes antivirus, even though it's not that, but still people use those terms.
That's the latest iteration of what used to be called antivirus.
Yeah. Yep. So there's all kind of stuff. So, EDR, XDR, MDR. I mean, it's just, it's hard for me to even keep up with so much stuff. What is this? What are all these things? Like, have you bought the latest acronym? I'm like, I don't know. I must need it. I must need it. But anyway, we're going to be talking about that. It's something very interesting to give you a little prelude to what's coming. So CISA decided that it would join with a critical infrastructure organization and do a red team test. So they're going to simulate being the bad guys and see just how bad things are. And I'll just leave it at this. It's worse than you think.
I know. So, it's one of those services that CISA provides to critical infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're in healthcare, your critical infrastructure, you could go ask them to do this. I strongly recommend you listen to this episode before.
Yeah.
And read the report before you go to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll know in a minute.
Yes, you will. All right. So let's dive into the HIPAA briefs, which we have a resolution agreement that dropped last week.
Yet another one.
Yeah. And this one's interesting. This is the first time I have ever seen the email notification be incorrect. I don't know if you caught it, Donna. The email notification says that they're paying a $5,000 amount for the settlement, but they're not paying $5,000 until you read the resolution agreement. Then you realize it's $25,000.
Yeah, I was getting it from the resolution agreement.
I know.
I always go to it. So.
Yep. So me being bleeding edge posted about this last week on LinkedIn as soon as I saw it hit my email inbox, and I was actually on the way out the door to do something else. And I'm like, there's been a new one dropped. It's a 2-year cap and $5,000 settlement, and went on my merry way. And then realized, oh, wait, somebody left out a 2. So I had to go back in and modify it. But I have never seen that happen before. But the point being, even the email notifications can sometimes have a typo. Go to the resolution agreement. Read it for yourself.
Yeah, because that's the legal document.
Mm-hmm.
But they did have their... they always have some little title at the top that's, here's our point. And then you have a follow-up that's the quote. And it says, small healthcare providers must also comply with HIPAA rules. And I was like, well, how much did we talk about that last week at boot camp?
Every day, all day.
Boot camp was intense, but it was so good.
Yeah, it was. And, we had providers, we had lawyers, we had non-technical, we had technical. We had 2 MSPs that were there, and
it was cool though. It was really cool. Great conversations. So shout out to everybody that was there. Felipe, especially, been a long time listener. Felipe, Stacy, Alex, Kristen, Rachel. Who am I forgetting? That's good enough.
A lot. Yeah, a lot. So you're brave. I'll never go down that list because I know I'm going to forget half the people.
I know, but I had to have it in my head for other reasons more than you did.
What's always funny, and we brought this up, but the day one, like everybody is like so quiet. Nobody's saying anything. Nobody's talking. And it's like, yeah, you won't be like this tomorrow. And sure enough, the next day they're all talking, they're laughing, and they're going on. You can't even separate some of them.
I know. Yeah. It's like they bond quickly in that environment. Yeah. Oh, Samantha and Khalil. I'll just start blurting out names periodically.
Yep.
But the most interesting part for me is the discussions that we get to have.
Mm-hmm.
The courses and the information, but it's the actual discussions when they ask a question or they bring up something they've heard about, and we get to have these detailed conversations. And one of the things that we went through was read these corrective action plans.
Mm-hmm.
And even used it as examples of here's exactly what you're supposed to do. And also what you're not supposed to do, which is what all the things were. And this one came out while we were there. And at first I'm like, oh, it's another one, didn't do the SRA. There is more to this one.
Mm-hmm. Just a little bit.
Just a little different. So this is Vision Upright MRI. It's a single location MRI center in San Jose, California. So small provider.
Mm-hmm.
Right off the bat, you know that. They should have been doing hiccup small technical volume 1.
Yeah,
but
would have helped them.
So it's not good when the story begins with OCR notified them on December 1st, 2020, that they had received information that the PAC server was accessible via the internet and PHI was disclosed.
I bet you they were like, who is OCR?
I want to hear the story. I'm going to get the story. May not be able to share it, but I'm going to get the story on this one. Because it's like, what? Usually when this stuff happens, it's an employee, an ex-employee, a patient, a vendor, some random internet researcher. Somebody finds the server and files the complaint.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not the way you want to be notified that you're going to have an investigation.
Mm-mm.
But the thing that you should do is when something like that happens, you should find the problem, fix the problem, and immediately start doing things like notifying people.
Yeah.
They didn't start notifying anybody until 2025. And the server, they got the notification from OCR in December 2020.
Ooh,
and
that's a little bit beyond 60 days.
21,778 patients. They started sending this stuff out in March of 2025. Interestingly, because they signed this resolution agreement in February 2025. They make sure all of this, everything's signed and the money changes hands before they, send this out, I guess. The delays say a lot about how much they worried about their program.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we've picked up clients that were these MRI centers, and I can't say that I'm surprised. And I can't say that I would be surprised if they do the corrective stuff and then just stop doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying. So they're going to be on a 2-year corrective action plan.
Mm-hmm.
After they wrote a $25,000 check. Likely their insurance company wrote it. However, they've also notified all those patients. That wasn't cheap. They're going to be on the corrective action plan. That's not going to be cheap.
Nope.
And the class action lawsuits are all over the place already.
Oh boy.
And the fact that OCR had, do you think it is gonna be just it's a feeding frenzy?
Yeah.
That they didn't find this themselves. They didn't report it. They didn't. So, and who knows what California laws might apply because of how they were handling it.
Yeah. And we've talked about before how, OCR is not trying to put anybody out of business.
No.
but do you think class action lawsuits care about that?
No, they do not.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, this is their $25,000 is their settlement. That's not the fine.
Right. Oh, of course not. That fine is
That
way up there.
So the only violations they listed in the resolution agreement, even though there's likely more, they listed the failure to do a comprehensive SRA, surprise, surprise,
Mm-hmm.
and failure to notify within 60 days. They could have done that in 2021 and saved themselves, but it's like they were like, what ifs? I don't know what happened, so I can't say, but boy, if I was a patient, that's what I would think.
This is like one of those that I would just assume they didn't even know, like what the time frame is. Maybe they don't know any of it. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say they didn't just snub their nose at it.
Yeah, okay. They didn't know what to do.
They didn't know.
So panicked. Fear.
I guess they should have known, but they didn't know.
Oh, yeah. So you want to give us our acting director quote?
Yeah. So he says, cybersecurity threats affect large and small covered healthcare providers. Small providers also must conduct accurate and thorough risk analyses to identify potential risks and vulnerabilities to PHI and secure them. So, you still got to do the work. The size don't matter.
No, it do not. So, that being said, we also have a PSA because I just saw a couple of articles and the headlines read enough for me to go, okay, gonna need to do a PSA on this.
Yeah. So this is something that came up early in IT circles, which is, can you do some type of extended Windows 10 end of life? Can you get support for it after the October date? And the answer is yes, but no.
Explain, David. Explain.
Well, they've got this program, ESU, Extended Security Updates program for Windows 10. And technically, you can purchase an extension of Windows 10. However, it is only available if you have a volume license. So most people don't have a volume license. If you have an MSP and they've got you on a volume license, you should probably be screaming because that's a violation of the licensing agreement with Microsoft to get people in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, it's
but
mostly
you can't do
big
that.
companies, right?
Yeah. You're buying hundreds and hundreds of licenses. You're going to have a volume license. And but it's not free. You still have to pay. And I'm trying to find the cost here, but it's not cheap. Here we go. So it's $61 per device for the first year, and then it doubles every year after that for up to 3 years.
So they don't want you to choose this option.
Yeah.
But if you're a giant company and you hadn't been able to get them all done, you are allowed 3 years lead time, but you're going to pay.
Yeah. And the updates you're going to get, if you happen to be able to get on this, you're only getting security updates, nothing else. No feature updates, no option updates, no driver updates, no, just security updates. It's like, it is the Band-Aid at best. Mm-hmm. Don't take this option, period. Don't just get rid of it. Go to Windows 11. You should have already done it anyway. At this point, we're 5 months out. We're coming into 4.8 months out. So
get it done. Whatever you got to do. Some have to upgrade hardware. You need to do that sooner rather than later because there's going to be a rush on hardware and we got supply chain issues on top of that. So,
yeah. I mean, even without the supply chain issues, look, we had the same issue the last time we had, Windows that went out of date and same issue, people running, trying to get away from Windows 7. We knew we were going
to have that. We knew that was going to happen. Now it's only exacerbated by the supply chain issues. It's going to be worse.
You have to exacerbate.
I know. I got to say exacerbate. I was smiling. I knew you'd be on it. Come on now. It's fun to throw in those, what is it, the dollar word and a 50-cent sentence.
Yeah. So there you have it. If you got anybody talking to you about trying to extend Windows 10, just don't do it. And again, if you're not on a volume license. You probably can't. Yeah. If you're not on a volume license, you can't do it anyway. Shouldn't be on a volume license unless you're supposed to be on a volume license, but chances are you'd know that, I would hope. Anyway, that is that. If you have any questions, contact your IT department or MSP. Don't call me. That is that. All right, let's dive into our juiciness here with the EDR failed, and so did leadership.
Yeah, so this is, like we said, it's a CISA service, and they do these where they have, it's the red team who is trying to attack your office. So it's a penetration test to see if they could get in, but it's like the high-end kind, the kind we say, these are expensive, and CISA helps do them for critical infrastructure, not just anybody. Mm-hmm. So you've got to go through a whole lot of stuff before you could have this done, and be interesting to see. I don't know that they've done many, if any, reports like this where they tell you what happened. They don't tell you who it is. They don't tell you which of the critical infrastructures they're in. They don't tell you much about details of software and protections, but you got enough to hear how bad it is.
Yeah. It should be enough for you to at least question, are you okay?
Yeah. Let's just say that we talk about how hackers will set up shop and hang out. Mm-hmm. They were able to do that for 3 months. Ooh. I mean, this was a long-term thing to see if they could get caught. And let's just say I am glad I did not have to read that information about my organization.
Yeah.
So all I'm saying is, wow. But good news is they did this, which is important because by doing this, now they know. They've seen it in action. They can believe it. So, you had this 3-month thing. They were doing a real world attack, just seeing what would happen. Everybody's coordinating, but you always have this one insider that's going to save you from the cops, right? Have to deal with that from time to time. I mean, you do those physical site visits and then you're like, honestly, call this person, don't call the police. And the attack team that's assigned to this, they know nothing. All they know is, here's your target, go.
Yep.
This company, go.
That's an important distinction because if you're paying for a pen test, some people will pay for an internal pen test. So basically, they've already got in. And sometimes they have, there's black box and there's white box. Anyway, it's just how much information do they already know?
Right.
And all of that determines how the engagement is going to go. Because if I tell you, I want you to attack my systems, and here's the username and password to the admin account, then, that's a thing, but you're getting a very different type of test than if you go, you don't know anything at all. And you're starting from the outside, not the inside. Mm-hmm. So anyway, all that said, they started from the outside with nothing. Just, here's your target. Go have fun.
Yeah. And so it starts good. right? The intrusion begins. So they're doing their OSINT, they're looking up email addresses and getting, figuring out emails they could use because that's the way everybody's going to start, right?
Yeah.
Phishing.
Yep.
And
that's what
they
did.
decided to spearfish, which is, it was exactly what would be done. It's not just flooding the organization. So they picked 13 employees, which they were able to find on the internet.
Oh, of course, because we're all on LinkedIn telling everybody where we work and what our position is and everything else.
Which you kind of have to do today's world, connect with others, but it's crazy. It's terrifying and exciting simultaneously, what we're able to do with social media. So they picked out 13 and they hit them with the spear phishing. One user did respond twice and ran the malicious payload twice. So thankfully, though, the EDR software detected it and stopped it, so they couldn't get in that way.
It reminds me of somebody once that did something similar, and they kept calling our support line and fussing because we kept blocking something they were trying to run. You're going to have to remove the security. It won't let me do what I want to do. But you're trying to install malware.
Yeah. So it's like, woo-woo. But one thing to note is the EDR twice detected malware, a payload trying to be run. So you know what that means the EDR did. It generated alerts.
Oh.
You know that, right?
And who's reading or watching or listening to said alerts?
Well, apparently nobody. Because nothing happened. So just saying, that becomes a theme for the rest of the discussion.
Yeah. Well, this is something that happens often, especially in smaller practices. It's like I went out and I bought EDR, fill in the blank version, and I loaded it and I'm good. And there are a lot of times these things, they alert. And they're like, sometimes they block things. Sometimes they're like, we're not sure whether to block it, but we're going to notify you and let you make a decision. But if you're not looking at it, you're not making a decision.
Yep.
So these folks that are not having anybody manage this stuff because maybe you have somebody in the office that's technically inclined enough to install it, I'm telling you, you're missing out. You open yourself up to a lot of risks.
Well, and it's, that's exactly what, they had those things. So they said, okay, we can't get in the easy way or the way most people do. They didn't keep trying and doing more spear phishing targets. They said, well, before we do anything else, let's look around. Let's probe the network, their public IPs.
Yep.
Which is not hard to
rattle
find.
the doorknobs. Rattle the doorknobs and push on the windows and see if anything opens.
And turns out one of the doors did open.
Of course it did. Of course it did.
And it's not clear whether it was a vendor doing this or the internal team doing this. Anyway, there was what they called a vulnerability disclosure program. I don't know.
Okay.
Some sort. But there was like a web shell left open for access. And it was just like, hey, I'm here. You want to talk to me? So we're going to assume, and the reason I'm assuming, it's similar to what, you and I talk about all the time, like why we want people to audit their firewall periodically. Check the settings because it's the same scenario, and probably a firewall was involved in some way with this, that you open up a port to test something and then you solve the problem, but you don't close the door that you opened.
Yep. Happens
and
often.
I'm not saying, I'm just saying, but so apparently somebody was testing and either it was internal or external, or it's something that they had to have open for one reason or another. And this piece is a little confusing. why that was there. But apparently they had seen it, but nobody mitigated it. And this is the part where leadership failed, and we'll get into that in a minute. So either another vendor or internal, they didn't close the door behind them. They left it. Now, the good news is it's a web shell, so it's not like something anybody could use.
Okay.
But an attacker could, not just somebody wandering around. And it was so bad that they said, okay, we're going to have to tell our insider that this is bad. And we're going to keep doing our work. But the insider then had to start the internal team doing threat hunting. They're looking for what's going on, what could be going on. They still didn't find them. And what they found was so bad, I have to give up the fact that I'm in there. Or not, so they don't actually say somebody's attacking. They say, hey, we've got this vulnerability. Let's make sure nothing's going on. So they're already looking for them, but then they still don't find them. So someone saw the problem before, this particular problem. So my guess is when they went looking, they're like, that's been there. We can't fix it. So move on. So anyway, but wait, there's more. That's not how it ended. So they were able then to get to this web shell, and they found a default user called web user 1, clearly a default username.
Yeah.
And it had like these huge sudo, but admin rights for those who don't speak that. In the Linux environment, it let them run commands without even having to enter a password, is what it means.
Right.
So they were able to get in and get authority to start moving around with this default username, running things, and then things started going downhill real quick after that. Nothing was good news. They were using just like the criminals do, living off the land. They're using tools that are already there or that are not a surprise if they're there. So that was good. And so they start scanning for things, and they were able to escalate their privileges because they found all kinds of private certificate files. And just the first time they did a scan, they found 61 private keys, and even worse, a file with clear text that had the domain access credentials.
Oh,
How many times have we talked about that? This is why you don't store things in clear open text. Oh, it's on an internal server. That's the biggest problem. Because not only do you have to assume the attackers are in, they've gotten in and can find it, but also malicious insiders could find it. So you can't just say that. Do not do that. And I was asked the question about, well, if we password protect it, a PDF, isn't that good enough? No, that is not encryption. That's just a password.
Yeah. I mean, I've had people tell me before they're using like Excel. We have a spreadsheet, it's got passwords in it, but we have it, we have it locked and we have it encrypted and password protected or whatever through Excel because, it'll do that for you. There are tools out there for dollars that will get through any Excel password that you put on there like that. So we've had to use it before.
Yeah.
So it's pretty easy to get through. So no, that's not good.
Yeah. So here again, we have more good news. They were trying, once they got into the Linux environment, they're like, okay, we want to go out to the internet, to our servers, and pull down some of our tools. And the good news is the Linux environment was configured to not directly access the internet. Great news.
Yeah.
But not. Because also on the network, they found a proxy server that was sitting there wide open. And so the proxy server says, I'll do work for you.
Right.
You just have to ask. And normally you secure that so that not everybody's asking, but it was designed specifically to take requests to go to the internet and do things and give them back to you. So the Linux that wasn't allowed to go, then just use that and had full traffic. So great news, not allowed to direct access. Not so great news, other ways to get there from the same devices. So at this point, they had ability to move all over all the Linux hosts. The Linux environment was pretty much theirs because within the first week of that initial compromise, they were completely established persistent access on 4 different Linux servers, including 2 highly privileged accounts with root access to hundreds of servers.
Well, it wasn't a small organization.
Nah.
Got that many servers.
Yeah, we already know that.
Yeah.
But
I will say that it is not uncommon that IT folk will throw a Linux device of some sort into your environment. And sometimes they don't necessarily know how to secure those things.
Yeah.
They're doing it because it's cheap or free or whatever. The Linux is great, but you got to know how to use it. You got to know how to secure it. Got to know how to support it, manage it, whole 9 yards. So just because you can install it doesn't mean a whole lot.
I know there's some stuff I want to do, and I'm like, I don't have time to, do my relearning of what I never did much. I did enough, and now nowhere near. So I would just be starting over, and it's just not worth it for me. Although I really want one to be able to do some sim work for me on my internal network, but never mind. Moving along.
Hook you up.
So they're on these Linux devices, and they even had it set up where it even had a little script. So if you rebooted it, it would just put them back in and let their connections back in, give them the authority. So those 4 that they were in complete control of. And so then they began looking around, and they get root access. They find one that's running a software program called Ansible Tower. And it's a Linux tool that does automation and scripting and had all kinds of access. From it, they could hit 6 other servers with root access and do whatever they wanted. And here again, because it was so bad, they had to tell their insider, because if it were a real attack who had gotten to where they got to, which we know could happen, 2 attackers into the same system is not like unheard of.
Oh, no.
So anyway, if it was a real attack, they would have had to shut down those services, which would have been major impact to running the business. And they're like, okay, we don't want you to have to do that. So chill. And, that it was that bad. And it made it even easier for them to kind of notice some abnormal activity from the red team, but they still didn't find anything to stop them.
Wow.
Yeah. So now we're 2 weeks in, and they're into the Windows domain controllers. They're able to get into those, get control of those, and even exfiltrated the Active Directory.
Uh-oh.
Once they got into Windows, I just quit keeping up with all the different things they were able to do. I mean, it's a long list because Windows is not easy to secure. And when you've got, tons of devices, whether it's a workstation or a server, whatever, they were all over the place. They pretty much did whatever they wanted.
This is a complex environment, and that makes it even harder. And this speaks to one of the things I always tell clients is we want to simplify your environment as much as possible, which is sometimes the opposite of what was done in the past.
Yeah.
You can always tell when somebody hired a person that came out of a corporate environment because they have way too much IT stuff. It's
Yeah.
like, this is so complex. You must have hired somebody that retired from, the Bank of America or something.
I know when somebody puts in and you got a company, the entire company has 4 people and you got 5 servers.
Yes, exactly.
There's
I'm like,
something you should question there.
Yeah, the harder or the more complex the environment is, the harder it is to protect, the more risk that's there. Like, simplify it.
Yes. So at this point, there is a long list, and I encourage you to go read this report. Now, it gets into the technical details, but don't go toward, just skip those when it starts sounding too techie for you. But you can pick out enough of it to get through. And at the end, they have this long chart that says, okay, we did this. This is what happened. We did this. This is what happened. And one of the things that I made note of, I didn't even get through all of those, but this one, so they targeted 9 users to get them to launch something that simulated a ransomware attack. 9 different users. Of those 9, 2 did what you would expect them to do. 2 of them said, hey, cybersecurity team, help desk, whatever, something wrong happening. And they were able then to find, the defenders found the 5 hosts that the ransomware simulation actually ran on. They were able to find it. What was concerning, however, was what the rest of the users did. Because as far as they could tell, 5 of them just rebooted their system when they saw ransomware. Just when in doubt, bail out.
They're like, I know if I call IT, they're just going to ask me if I rebooted. So let's just start there.
Yeah. And 1 logged off and back on again, kept going. 1 just kept closing the ransomware application repeatedly and kept working. That one's like, I'm busy. I can't deal with you right now. Just keep going. You just keep attacking us. 1 just locked their screen and walked away, apparently. I just can't. And another user just exited the whole process after letting it run for 2 hours. But none of those people told anybody.
All right. Wow.
So interesting after the long discussion we had about how it is important that, cybersecurity is a team sport, and we have to work on building the culture where everybody recognizes cybersecurity is part of everybody's job. It's not somebody else's job. It is part of your job to worry about cybersecurity for the organization. So let's just say the list is very long and no need to keep going through it. But they did then have a discussion about what the defenders were able to do. And the good news is, they did point out that they did do some things correctly. But the overall assessment was not good. They had tools, and they're relying on the tools to just take care of it. And when the tools alerted, they either didn't read them or just ignored what they said. Some of their tools that were supposed to be securing things were completely disabled, not doing anything.
Oh.
Yeah. So, and since you love the EDR, I thought you would enjoy this quote from the report. You got it?
Yeah. So the organization's EDR solutions largely failed to protect the organization. EDR detected only a few of the Red Team's payloads in the organization's Windows and Linux environments. In the instance the EDR protected the organization from the initial phishing payload, it generated an alert that network defenders neither read nor responded to. The Red Team excelled in bypassing EDR solutions by avoiding the use of basic known bad detections the tools would capture. The team also inflated its file sizes above the upload threshold of the organization's EDR. In addition, the organization completely lacked any EDR solution in a legacy environment. As such, the Red Team's persistence there went undetected throughout the assessment. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
It's like,
you're gonna assign this for your whole team to read this report, aren't you?
I've already sent it to them. I was like, y'all need to read this because, I mean, just this paragraph alone tells me a few things we run into all the time. And it's not just the users. This is the technical people. They rely way too much on the tools. Mm-hmm. And they also aren't paying attention when the tools actually are working and telling you and screaming at you. And, you know, you have alert fatigue. I get it. But
and here we are, everybody talking about how AI is going to do all of this stuff. And it has the same problems.
Mm-hmm.
And will continue to have the same. It's trained to think like a human, which then starts to assume that I know what I'm doing. Right. You know, but they had like 4 positive things they did, but they paled in comparison to the things that went wrong.
Yeah.
And,
well, it's because you have to be right 100% of the time in cybersecurity.
Yep.
Like you could say, well, they only had one thing wrong. Yeah, but that one thing was enough.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, 3 months.
Yeah.
You know, I have like some little nagging something that like only one tool is detecting, and I'm constantly trying new things to try to figure out what that one. I still have the one thing that I can't figure out what, but all the tools, I have several, and only one is detecting this problem. And anyway, see, this stuff drives me nuts, and I continue to chase it, and it's not even my full-time job. It's not even part of my job. Technically, it's not even in my job description.
Yeah, I mean, this organization obviously had the resources, the manpower. You know, they had network defenders. They had obviously a whole team of people. If they had that many servers and Linux and all this other stuff, they had that. And they had EDR, which I would love to know what EDR they had. But they're not going to say that because, you know, as an IT nerd, we always fuss about who's got the best EDR solution.
Yeah. Well, you know, and everybody thinks theirs works better than everybody else's. That's always the thing, right?
Yeah, because, you know.
Mine's always better than yours.
The other piece of it is it's not, nowadays, it's not just, am I using the best EDR and can I flex with that? It's like, am I using the best stack? Yeah. Because it's not just the EDR. It's, am I using the best, you know, hamburger meat and onions and tomatoes and bun? You know, it's like, is all of it the best? Because that's a constant question that most MSPs have. If they're being honest with you, they're all questioning, do I really have the best stack that I can get for my money and for my clients?
Yeah.
It's always a question because there's infinite number of ways to mix and match all these different vendors out there.
Well, you're hoping that's what they're saying because that's what they should be saying.
Yeah, you're hoping. But, I mean, that's why we went through an entire overhaul last year. In 2024, we overhauled almost every tool we had because I didn't feel like it was the best stack anymore. Yeah. It was the best stack when we got it. It wasn't the best stack 3 years later.
And it wasn't just like, what, a month or two ago that you're like, oh, no, have I got to look at changing my stack again?
Oh, yeah. But
I don't remember what it was, but something happened. Anyway.
Would abandon me if I did it.
Hey, David, you need to change all of your software again. I quit.
Yeah, they probably would.
It's like the little boy in the video. I quit. Yeah, we use a lot of funny videos in our training at boot camp, and it does help. But then it's in my head because it's funny. Anyway, the executive summary, if you read the beginning of the report, which, you know, I started by reading it and then went, oh, I got to read more on this. They break it down to 3 lessons learned with 7 different findings. Mm-hmm. So first lesson learned is insufficient technical controls. Finding number 1, the perimeter is not adequately segmented. It wasn't firewalled between perimeter-facing devices and internal devices. Mm-hmm. So what they're basically saying is all of this stuff that has to have external access there needs to be some segmentation blocking certain traffic from those devices to the devices inside the network that don't have to have external exposure. And that's part of segmentation.
Mm-hmm.
Finding number 2, over-reliance on host-based tools. And they pointed out, they counted on these host-based tools, but none of them detected the network layer activity of what they were doing.
Mm.
There was nothing watching for nefarious activity on the network.
Right.
Lack of monitoring on the legacy systems. They were like, we were in there for months and nobody noticed anything. At least on some of the others, alerts did pop up and they could see them pop up.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times on these legacy systems, it's like, well, our new EDR won't run on it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So now what do you do? But you can't just ignore it. And that was the point.
Right.
Is you can't just ignore it. So if you can't do this, you got to do something else.
Let's bring this back to our discussion at the first of it, which is, this is why you don't stay on Windows 10.
Yes.
Because you don't want it to become a legacy system at some point that you can't secure.
Yeah. So those are the insufficient technical controls. Lessons learned number 2 is continuous training, support, and resources are needed.
Mm-hmm.
Multiple systems were configured insecurely. So
Ooh.
that's support and training and resources, all of those. Alerts were ignored or not reviewed completely. Because I think they were even triggering them on purpose and nothing was happening. All
right. It's like I'm ringing the bell. Nobody's answering.
Yeah, I'm the thief. I'm in here letting you know I'm in here. Nada.
The thief is walking up and ringing your doorbell. After they open the door, they're like reaching out from the inside and ringing the doorbell.
Looking in the camera. Hey, I'm here.
There you go.
And then finding number 6, poor identity management. So the identities, all of those default ones they were able to use, and there were multiple default ones. Mm-hmm. And if there are default things built into the system, you need to know about those and do something to secure the default ones or get rid of them if you're allowed to, and that's something that drives me nuts sometimes. And there's even a thing where it's like, it's on there and it's built into the operating system, but they don't use it anymore, but you can't take it off and it has a known vulnerability in it. Mm. And it just, anyway, I don't need a soapbox today. They were doing manual log reviews, so that it's like they, I guess, didn't have a SIM or something, which seems odd. And they didn't detect any of the Active Directory abuses, and they were abusing the Active Directory like crazy, doing stuff, going wherever they wanted in Windows.
There's no way in an environment this large you could do a manual log review. You can't even do it in a small environment.
Well, that's what I know, right? We had a whole long discussion about that, didn't we?
Yeah.
That it's a complicated problem. Yes, yes, it is. That's the extent of where we end up every time we go down that path. But then we get to what the other part, EDR failed, but leadership did too. And this was, and I was surprised to see this in the executive summary of the report. Leadership deprioritized known vulnerabilities.
Ooh.
Yes. Lessons learned business risk. That they did the risk-based management, and they decided that the impact or likelihood, the impact could be big, the likelihood's so small, they're going to accept the risk because the security team told them, we've got insecure and outdated software, and we need to do X, Y, and Z to fix that. And they're like, no, we're not going to do it. We don't think that's a big enough risk. And this gets back to, if there's a tiny little hole, a vulnerability, and this was, I think, I'm kind of trying to remember the detail, but I'm almost certain that it had to do with the web shell they used to get in.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got a public-facing vulnerability, you can't just say, we're not going to worry about it.
All right. And this might be why the failures were as bad as they were, because I can imagine if I'm on an IT team and I care about my job and protecting the organization, but yet leadership is deprioritizing things and like, oh no, we're not worried about that. At some point you're like, you know what? I can't care more than they do.
And that's exactly perfect to bring it right back around to, you're going to get that result in your culture if that's the way leadership sees things.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Because culture is top down.
That's right.
So when we say that the security team, they know this, they tried to do compensating controls, they didn't work, but they were trying to secure old, outdated stuff that's hard to secure. So, leadership set the expectation. After that, what do you expect?
All right. So there we have it. You got IT failures, you got EDR failures, you got employee failures, and then ultimately leadership failures, which I would argue maybe the leadership failures probably contributed to all the rest of it.
Yeah, if you change that attitude, I bet it changes a lot of things. I'm not going to worry about paying attention to the alerts because it's not important.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I found an alert. I go to my leadership team, tell them about it. And then they're like, yeah, we can't prioritize that. So what's the point?
Yeah. You just figure something out.
Figure it out. All right. There we go. There's your warning today from a lot of different levels. Don't trust anything. Verify.
Yes.
All right. That is our show for today, folks. Be sure to join us again next week. And remember, for Donna and myself, that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.